Hello and welcome to the Gym RPG Show. So this is the PC Build Diary series where I talk about various types of builds, both budget builds and also expensive builds. And I talk about the various types of parts you want to be putting into those systems. Now, as you can see, I got some parts in front of me for a real build, and this is the build that I wanted to make, and this was the first video that I talked about in this series, which was my ultimate gaming PC. And in that video I talked about a 5900X and a 3080 PC. Now, as you can see, I don't have either of those parts in front of me. I've got a 10900K, and I'll explain why I decided to get that in the end. And also with the 3080, well, the 3080 is just a crazy situation right now, and there's really no GPUs available in my country, even if I wanted to get something else. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I want to talk about the other things that I got, and I pretty much got all of the parts except for that GPU. And even though I don't have it sitting in front of me, I've got it ordered and delivered. Okay, so remember, if you like this video, make sure to click the like button and also to subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Okay, let's talk about the 10900K first. Now, why did I get a 10900K? And you know, I made a video about how there was going to be lots of Ryzen CPUs coming, and yep, I know, I'm waiting for a Ryzen, and I could still possibly get a Ryzen for the video editing PC that I'm going to be doing, or this might end up being my PC that I'm going to be using for video editing. So that's why I decided to get a 10900K, because I wasn't sure what was going to be happening with the Ryzens in my country, and it could very well be a month, or it could very well be 3 months. And I also don't think the price is going to be coming down on that 5900X anytime soon, especially if there's not as much stock as I expected, especially in my country, because every country is going to be different, right? So if you have lots of stock in your country, maybe it will be close to that MSRP, but if there's not that much stock, then you could see the resellers holding off on selling it for too low of a cost, and they might try to bump that price up. So this 10900K was $500 in my country, and obviously that's after taxes, and I thought that was a pretty good deal considering the 10850K was pretty much the same price, minus like $20. So I decided to get the 10900K. The 3900X is more than this 10900K, so I think that was about $600. So I decided to go with the 10900K. It has a little bit faster gaming performance than the 3900X, so I think that should be okay when you compare it to the 5900X. I think the 5900X is a little bit faster than this in terms of gaming, but this should be fine for gaming anyway. Okay, so the next thing I got was a CPU cooler for cooling this beast of a CPU. And I got a Lian Li Galahad AIO 360. Now, this was reviewed by Gamers Nexus, and they gave a pretty good review, and it was pretty close to the top of the charts in that. And this is a 360. So in terms of wanting to cool a 10900K, you're really looking at a 280 or a 360, I think, because of the temperatures you can get on this thing. And this thing does almost 250 watts when you turn the MCE, or the multi-core enhancement, on, and that's where you can boost all of the cores up to as long as it can hold the temperatures. With the tower cooler, you could do it with one of those Dark Rock Pros, which has a TDP of 250 watts, but there aren't that many tower coolers there that do 250 watts, so you have to look carefully for the right one. So the other thing was the price of this AIO, this Lian Li Galahad, and that was about $150. So I thought that was a pretty good deal. Although I will say the difference between the Intel and the AMD chips, with the Intel, you're trying to cool 250 watts, so that's a lot of heat that you have to dissipate. But with the Ryzen chip, the 3900X, you're really only trying to dissipate 140 watts of heat. So technically, you could really go with a tower cooler there, almost save like $100 if you wanted to on the cooling. So that's really the difference between the Intel versus the AMD, and that's a decision that you really should think about when you decide what CPU you're going to be buying. Okay, the next part I want to talk about is the motherboard, and I got an MSI Gaming Edge Wi-Fi. Now this board cost me $250, so I would say it's around the mid-range price range. So it's not as cheap as say a Z490A or a Z490 Prime from Asus, and that's about like $180-ish. This is kind of like the next level up. But I think you get a really good motherboard with good VRMs. Now, Hardware Unboxed actually tested this on a 10900K, which was the reason why I got it. And they tested it for about an hour or 2 hours on like Cinebench or Prime 95 or something. I forgot what it was, but they tested it out and the VRMs got up to about 65 degrees. So I was pretty happy with that, and that's why I decided to get it. Now, there's also a similar motherboard. It's the MSI Tomahawk. And so that's pretty close to the Gaming Edge Wi-Fi. The difference is that I think for the Z490 anyway, the Gaming Edge has the Wi-Fi in it and the Tomahawk doesn't. So that's the difference there. So the next thing I want to talk about is the memory, and I got the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro 64GB. And it's DDR4 32 megahertz memory. Now, I got the RGB version because the non-RGB was actually more expensive than the RGB. So I'm not sure if it was a mistake from the seller or not, but I got the RGB version. And for the speed of it, I decided to go with 3200 megahertz because the 3600 megahertz was going to be $50 more. So the 3200 was $200 and the 3600 was $250. I decided to just go with the 3200 because I don't think I'm going to be getting an extra 25% of performance out of my PC if I got the 3600. So I guess, you know, if you got the money, go ahead and get the 3600, but the 3200 was going to be fine for what I needed anyway. Okay, for the SSD, I decided to get a Gen 3 SSD, which is this ADATA SX8200 Pro, which is right here. And this cost me $150. Now, that's a little bit more expensive than you would pay in the United States, where it's about $120, I believe. But I decided to go with this because the Gen 4 SSDs was just way too expensive. I think for a Samsung 980 Pro, that's going for about $200. So there's an $80 difference between this $120 one and the $200 980 Pro. I'm not sure if the price is worth it right now. I think you can sit on this until you really need a Gen 4 SSD, and then you can just upgrade, because that's a very easy thing to do. You just pull out the old SSD and put the new one in, and if you've got a second slot, you know, it's going to be so easy for you to just add that Gen 4 SSD on later anyway. So that's why I just went with Gen 3 for now and save that extra money. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the GPU, and I don't have a GPU in front of me right now, so I'll keep this one real short, but essentially it's about $1,000 when they're actually available. And sometimes it might be like 1 or 2 cars a week that's listed online, and the seller wants like $1,000 for it. And it's pretty easy to see where they get $1,000 because, you know, you add $100 for taxes, $100 for above base level card, and $100 for the seller as well because he wants to make his profit as well. So easy to get like $1,000 from that $700 card. And I actually almost got close to buying one, but I emailed the seller asking him if he had any stock, and before he responded, it was already sold out. So I guess I just have to keep waiting. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is this Lian Li LANcool 2 mesh, which is sitting right here. Now, initially I was going to get the P400A, but now that I actually have the LANcool 2 mesh, I actually much prefer the LANcool 2 mesh because it looks like it has better build quality than that P400A that I see in videos. And as you can see here, it's really easy to get into the PC, and there are no screws anywhere. So here you can just open the door for this power supply area and the hard drive cages, and then that allows you to open this door right here, and then you can easily get into the PC without actually having to unscrew it all and then pop up the door or anything like that, which was always a bit of a nuisance, like getting that window out and then putting it back on whenever you want to do something. And this happens on both sides as well, so there's doors on both sides, just like this side. Now the only thing is that it doesn't fit the 360 AIO at the top, so just make sure that you that's not something that you want to do, run the AIO and exhaust, and that you're only going to put a 360 at the front of it. You can fit a 240 or a 2480 on top if you want to do that, so that's fine. And also this LAN Cool 2 mesh, it comes in the RGB and non-RGB versions. Okay, so we've come to the last item on this list, and this is the power supply, and I'm going to keep this one short. So I got a Corsair RMX 850 watt 80 plus gold certified fully modular ATX power supply. Now, some people have asked whether you should get a 750 watt or an 850 watt power supply, and I would say if you're on Ryzen, so that would be the 3900X or the 3950X, those top CPUs, you could probably go with a 750 watt power supply. But if you're on Intel, the 10900Ks, then I would suggest the 850 watt, because if you do the math, right, so this is 250 watts, then you have 300 watts for your GPU, so that's 550 watts, then you add another 70 watts for your motherboard, so you're on about 650 to 700 watts already, just for those three items. So that's why I decided to go with 850 watts, because if you get 750 watts, you're running it pretty close, and then you're probably not going to have enough power for either this, or if you want to overclock your 3080 a little bit, then you're probably not going to have enough room, I think. So, you know, pay that extra $20-$30 for the extra 100 watts power supply. Okay, so that's my build, and hopefully next time I have that 3080 before I make another of these videos in this series, and then we'll get stuck into building the thing and also setting it up. And I guess that can also be part of this series as well, about how I'm going with this PC that I'm building. Okay, so that's going to be it for this video. I hope you found something interesting here, and if you have any questions below about the parts that I got, or any other parts that you want to talk about, make sure to leave a comment below. I'll try to get back to you. And if you like this video, make sure to click the like button, and also to subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.